If you ask most people that play Vampire Survivors how many ways exist or existed to kill the Reaper, then you'd probably hear of 2 or 3 ways. But there's a total of 8 ways how people were able to beat the Reaper. Beating the Reaper unlocks Red Death and is pretty much the last milestone that you can reach in the game. Today I will talk about the history of Reaper kills in Vampire Survivors and what changed. Before I get started, I will pin a bunch of videos related to the topics I talk about. Overall, we see different degrees of how to obtain Red Death, since this is in the end the goal, starting with those that people view as fully legit, then some that people view as exploits, others that require modding, but that people view as better than just modding in the character himself, and lastly, just modding in the character. That one I will not talk about, since, well, that has nothing to do with killing the Reaper. I personally don't care how you play the game, it's a single player game, play how you want to play it, I just use the terms to describe what happens. So, let's just start with a modding one, since this was the first one in the game. While it's generally speaking not considered a legit way of doing it, back then it was the only way to kill the Reaper. The very first method included garlic and, well, modding its damage into the millions. In fact, the damage was modded so high that it would simply one-shot the Reaper. Why garlic? I honestly have no idea. In fact, there are so many better ways that I don't understand why this one was chosen, but hey, it's godlike garlic, I get it. So starting with the first, in quotation marks, official strategy that is probably also the most well-known one and the longest working one, is the strategy that uses Cleric on level 2. On February 7th, a channel that I can't pronounce, here you can see it, managed to get the first Reaper kill with the use of mods. While modded, these were only used to improve the odds that they get a weapon that they wanted to have, which is the bone. However, you might understand that people were not too happy, given that the weapon is so rare that at that point a lot of people didn't even know they can get it on another character. But a few days later, the channel was then the first one to also provide a method that doesn't use the bone and only the rune tracer. The same channel was also the first one, and to my knowledge only one, to produce a video where he killed not 1 but 2 Reapers, and that time using the bone again. At the time of the strategy, the character that you would unlock is called MissingNo, a character that randomizes his stats every time you go into the character selection. After a couple days of the discovery, the developer hid away MissingNo and replaced him with Red Death, the character that you get nowadays. While MissingNo is hidden, he is not unobtainable. With the help of backup editing, the fun character can be unlocked again. So to break down the strategy, and this will be a long one given that this has been under development for months now and a lot changed in the game, the strategy uses the temporary area boost of Cleric and the objects on the library map. In a right position, though right is still something that is RNG reliant, the rune tracer bounces in a tight spot an insane amount of times and kills anything that comes close. In a similar fashion, the Reaper is then killed. Since Arcana were added, it has become a lot easier, mostly because of the Awake Arcana, which gives additional revives and, upon dying, a stat boost to the player, but the biggest impact overall was probably the ability to banish. Since the first kill, the strategy has been worked on and optimized, and while the optimizations are not necessary, I mean, I've seen people get a Reaper kill without even lore or clock lancet, because the Reaper was stuck on objects, the goal of these optimizations is to give you the highest chance to succeed. Cleric works so well since the Reaper scales by 655,000 HP per level that you have, meaning he has only 1.3 million health. Compared to a normal boss, that does sound like a lot, but it's nothing in comparison to the 130 million health that he has if you attempt it on level 200. The strategy overall includes RNG and is not as simple as copying exactly what someone else is doing, just as a word of warning. Next up as number 2 we have the secret character Toasty, and for this one, up to my knowledge, I have the first recorded unmodded kill on the Reaper. Toasty as Reaper killer was worked on when she was released, however there were a few issues initially. To understand, the strategy uses an armor boost that the character receives at level 200. While this boost is huge, in fact it's 65,520, it was not enough to survive against the Reaper, who has 65,535 damage, but the update also added one key element for later, Gatiamari. In short, Gatiamari scales infinitely by eating chickens dropped on the floor.
He just dropped the chicken on the floor.
At that time it used to be +1 damage per chicken eaten, as well as a multiplier for its chance to do an interaction of 1.1. At maximum, Toasty could reach 65,528 armor, or take 7 damage per hit, which is sadly not enough to go infinite. In the following update, Arcana were added, and the one that we care about the most with this strategy is Awake. Awake gives you 3 additional revives, so including the power up and Tiragisu, you could get a total of 6 revives. And it also gives the character per lost revive a stat boost. Most importantly, +1 armor. So in total, Toasty would reach 65,534 armor and only take 1 damage per hit from the Reaper. Combine this with invulnerability frames, so whenever you take damage there's a certain amount of time that you can't take damage again, and it was possible to go fully AFK by just using the Bloody Tear, which heals you for 8 HP, and eventually get a Reaper kill. Gatiamari's catfight damage attacks an insane amount of 33 times a second, and potentially more due to how the game code works. So in theory it could be up to 1000 times, though this is insanely unlikely. Point is rather, it can be a lot more than 33 times. And with scaling infinite damage from chickens eaten, it usually led to a kill 60 to 90 minutes after the first Reaper spawned. Sadly, this strategy was nerfed heavily, which I still view as a mistake, and now scales way less. The damage increase of previously +1 is now decreasing per chicken eaten and reaches its minimum value at 103 chickens eaten, with a bonus of only 0.05. Yeah, you heard that right. That means you need to eat 20 chickens at a time for the same result as prior to get +1 damage. However, the strategy still works. I've seen a kill time anywhere from 100 minutes to 500 minutes after the first Reaper spawned. This is mostly because of lag that people encounter. The more it lags, the less damage the Reaper will take. But that also means for some people it's pretty much impossible, since the game slows down even more and more the longer they go on, and they simply don't deal enough damage for that. At number 3 we have Christine, and in theory also Arca, and technically speaking any character could do this, but she's by far the most reliable and best one. Christine is unique because she gains insane cooldown reduction boost of 25%, allowing her to reach a total of -70% cooldown. And for this one, again up to my knowledge only, this was a strategy I came up with, and soon after it was used for the first semi-infinite run that completely broke records on the leaderboard in regards to survival, independent of movement restrictions on the given map. To understand what happens, you need to understand that every weapon in the game has a form or knockback on its attack. On enemies like the Reaper, who is knockback immune, this causes a stutter movement. The strategy uses Feraci and Labora to stagger the Reaper to an extreme. He is still able to slightly move, but very little, where it's very simple to freeze them again and again. In my first attempt on the best map for this, the Dairy Blend, I went AFK at 120 minutes into the game in hopes I would die soon, since I couldn't bring it over my heart to just quit the run, and I died at 175 minutes in, so it took 55 minutes of me doing nothing to finally die. The main reason is that at this point there are so many Reaper around you that they shield you off of the other Reapers, and the clock length it goes around so fast that they are just constantly frozen. Just to put this into perspective, maps with a lot of movement restriction prior used to have a record in the 50 to 60 minutes. However, actually getting a kill can easily take over a day, and you have to use Gatiamari, which makes it a bit more complicated, since the cats can break your shield. At number 4 we have Porta. This is also a very old one. Porta is also unique because of her temporary bonus, just like Cleric gains one, but this one receives 90% cooldown reduction on level 1. Every level up she loses 30% of that bonus. With a pretty much perfect setup that has to avoid gathering experience, the goal is to get 4 empty tomes on the library map, that they spawn and you collect them, get to level 2 and pick Laurel. Laurel is a weapon that provides you with invulnerability, and recharges every couple seconds. You might see where I'm heading with this. Reaching a very low cooldown and high enough level of laurel by picking up chests dropped from bosses will lead to a laurel shield that recharges faster than it's broken, meaning it's impossible to die. As soon as the XP threshold on the map is maxed, enemies won't drop experience anymore, and it's instead gathered in one red gem, so even if enemies overrun you, nothing can go wrong anymore. But the main problem is that you can't level up later on, meaning you're stuck with a level 8 lightning ring, since you can still pick up the chests, and the estimate for Reaper kill is several days, if not even more. Well, given that you actually try to stay infinite. So, after reaching the Reaper, you can just go for a normal Cleric build with the Rune Tracer, so you have Lightning Ring instead of Center Water, and then you can just do the same thing. Is it worth the effort? I don't believe so. Honestly, Cleric is just easier, but you know, it's just fun to know. At number 5 we have Mortaccio. Yes, believe it or not, the dude also managed to bone the Reaper. Now, I've seen multiple videos in the past and I can't find most of them anymore, mostly because YouTube buried them, and they pretty much ranged from level 5 to level 20 once they hit the 30-minute mark. Overall, the idea is simple. Get to minute 30 on a very low level, similar to Cleric, and use the absurd damage that the bone deals, which tops the damage of Rune Tracer by a crazy amount, to compensate for the higher level that you get there. This works by getting your bone stuck inside of the Reaper, which causes it to spin and thrust around like crazy, demolishing the insides of the Reaper. But for real, I mean it. For some reason on bosses the bone gets stuck on them, and pretty much bounces as the Rune Tracer does next to the table, but the entire boss is the object, so it just bounces all the time. And as a bonus one, though not the last one, MissingNo. Since MissingNo stats are random, or rather random but within a certain range, it's possible to reach insanely low cooldown or negative health. The insanely low cooldown results in the same thing as Porta, but on this one it's permanent and not lost upon leveling up, while the negative health results in him not being able to take damage. Yes, it is impossible, you can't take damage anymore. While nowadays the character needs file editing to obtain him, back then it used to be the reward for killing the Reaper, meaning people could actually do it using MissingNo. Not sure how helpful that would be, given you have to kill him first and then you unlock this guy, but you know, you heard about it. In fact, there are quite a few people that don't like the idea of just modding in Red Death, and instead they prefer to use MissingNo to kill him. As an honorable mention, I want to refer to a bug abuse strategy. This one requires a spamming of the escape button while you're dying. Maybe you've encountered a bug in the game where once you level up and you press escape, that the menus overlap. If you do this while you die and you hit the right timing, then the game behaves a bit weird and it just continues at one point. But you are still dead. You are not alive. That means it's impossible for you to die. The video that I have seen used Mortaccio, since again, the bone thrusting is just too OP, even on level 1. So you pretty much just wait until a Reaper dies, then you click on revive since you're still dead, and then you leave the game. Well, this was the video about the history of Reaper killing methods. And believe it or not, despite talking so much about Cleric and Toasty, this is pretty much just the top of the iceberg. I think in the future I will do another video that goes more over Cleric and how much changed, especially the different methods on how to perfect the strategy. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you want to see more, subscribe to the channel. Good luck killing the Reaper.